Hello, August 12th, 2020, and here we are. We're dealing again, continuing on the series of where it's toxic friendships, and this will be four. And I'll talk quite a bit on intimacy and sexuality and things like that, because it really, you have to understand who you are, what surrounds you, and not be unaware of the enemy's craftiness. The enemy uses people, yes. People should make better choices, yes. But sometimes people aren't even true to their own heart. So, why is that? I'll talk about that today. I'll give some examples. I'll talk about people I've talked to in the past, things they went through, without, of course, giving anything that gives up who they are, because I believe in absolute privacy there. But I do know that when people have been inflicted with things, you may not know what they've been through, and that could affect how they are later on. One of the hardest things for most people is that when somebody comes up to you and they seem to love you, and within no time flat, all of a sudden you're wondering where all that love went. But yet they're not really letting you off the hook. They're kind of using you on the hook because they want you there. But at the same time, they seem to be looking elsewhere, but you can't prove it. And that's really harmful for a lot of people. It brings rejection, it brings deep pain. And the person, a lot of times, was building their confidence on the person they met. When the person starts abandoning them, they start feeling absolutely torn apart. It wrecks their life. And you'll have a girl that will fall in love here, there, and everywhere, or a guy. And it leaves the other people that do that will usually look for vulnerability. And the vulnerability they look for is they look for somebody that feels lonely, that wants somebody there, because they're the quickest catch and they can quickly dispose of later on. And they can use them the way they want. The important thing is that the person that's being used needs to recognize the symptoms and absolutely just say to the person, you know, I think it's good that you go on and do whatever you want to do, but I need to get my life squared up. When you let somebody use you and manipulate you and control your mind or your emotions, then it's not the other person that's doing it, it's you, because you're giving them the ability to. It's like somebody wants to steal your car. Well, you don't have to hand them the car keys. So when somebody comes at you to really draw from you, and you feel so invited, and next thing you know, it turns really quickly. If you see something like that, don't ignore those things. And if you get with somebody and very shortly afterwards you find out that they're around and they're kind of flirting around the place and making moves on other people, now my suggestion to you might feel, I'm in love with this person, I don't want to let go. Well, that's silly. You should let go, because the person has not decided that you're valuable enough to turn their whole life over and to be with you. So if that's the case, why would you devalue yourself more and actually invite that person to play with your emotions, your feelings, your life? And they won't respect you for doing whatever you can to keep them. They'll actually walk on you more. But you need to know when to draw the line and say, no, sorry, this isn't good. Because that type of relationship will only destroy you more and bring you to a point of just absolute pain. So cut that off quickly, right? Now, I'll go through different things. There's girls that will dress up like a baited lure. They'll walk around and they're not trying to find a guy in a permanent relationship. Oh, that's wrong of you, Pastor. You're judging in that. No, they're actually drawing the guy's attention to their physical appearance. If you want somebody to stay with you and be in a relationship, then you want to draw them to your thoughts, to your heart. But when you start drawing them to, oh, but if they love me, then they'll love every part of me. And if they really got to enjoy your looks, problem is your looks may change, and then they may not enjoy you anymore. And your foundation of your relationship has to be built on real relation, real love. And love is not just a feeling of good feeling, but the real true test of love is when you go through things and you have to work out, where the other person is dissatisfied about something, you're dissatisfied about them. And so you start getting to a point where you start realizing, excuse me, I'm just going to stop kicking this thing. Okay, there you go. So you have to realize that if you go out fishing, whether you use a lure, for the ones that don't know, you're not going to understand this fully, but what you use as tackle is what the type of fish you get too. If you want somebody who's honorable in your life, and I've heard this said so often, girls and guys saying, I always choose the wrong person. Well, who's in the equation every time? That person. And so did they always find the wrong person, or is it what they're looking for? Maybe they aren't looking for a solid relationship and they're lying to themselves. They need to start facing that. Maybe they're trying to keep their options open. If that's the case, you shouldn't be out there because you're going to get yourself in a lot of issues. So the best thing to do is to turn around, make a decision. Am I ready? Am I ready to commit? Do I want to commit? What type of person? This is the problem. A lot of people try to find somebody to fill their emptiness. You can get yourself in trouble doing that. Don't ever do that. And I'm starting to move more towards relationship. I don't want to do that too much. I just want to stay in the problem areas, the controls, the manipulations. And this is not about relationship. It's about toxic relationships. So it's not about how to build into a marriage and so on, but it's about how to see the telltale signs that tells you maybe you should take the fire exit quickly. All right? Okay. So if the person you're with, you have to keep catching their attention and they're always giving you excuses, well, that's a telltale sign, because somebody who's really wrapped up with you, they'll be calling you. And if you're overly demanding, you'll probably push the person away. So that's another thing to look at. But when you start being manipulated by a person, there's a few things. One, anger is a quick way to get a person to back off from asking you questions and to back off from really questioning anything. The most important thing in a relationship and the intimacy is the communication, whether good or bad. Well, what do you mean by bad? Sometimes you're upset and you need to talk things and it seems bad. If it's done with anger and blame and criticism, that's not a conversation and that should be stopped right away. If you see stuff like that, you don't have a relationship, you have abuse. Whether you're putting it on to the other person is, it doesn't matter. Abuse is abuse. And abuse, you can grow up and become more mature and learn not to do that. But the thing is, if that's the case, wait till you mature, because you're going to cause yourself and other people a lot of pain. And that you don't want to do. So how you behave. Now I'm going to start hitting this. The girl that dresses like that, there'll be one type of girl that she's looking for is just to know that she can get any guy she wants. So she'll dress provocatively. She'll try to tease the guys and get them very interested in her. And then poof, she backs off. And what's she doing? She just wants power. And then you get another one that will take on a guy, but then quickly discard him and grab another one. And what she's looking for is to see what level, who she believes or what she can get. And she's really, it's like a predator mentality. She's actually heading off after just to see who she could power over. And girl or guy, sometimes they love to have quite a few people at the same time. It's like, really? Yeah, there's some people like that. And they love it because they love the power that they can actually deceive and control and manipulate. And so they're not committal anywhere. But how could you do that and not end up with a worse situation? What's going on with the person that's doing that? And that's what I will talk about today. I will explicitly go into that for girls and guys. I'll show the different things. Some of them are serious and painful. And whoever's been through that, please be very graceful and merciful to them. And others, it's arrogance, ego, pride. Others is the fact that they never got a hold of who they are and they're still trying to find themselves, but they've gone from being kind to all of a sudden being selfish. And that's a person that can cause a lot of damage. And I'll cover that. All right. So, and then you got a person that just outrightly, sexuality is not always something that a person goes after just because they want an intimate moment. Sometimes also it's an anger. They're releasing an anger by doing that. Sometimes it's where they want to know that they can please somebody, but they're not doing it for the other person. They're doing it for themselves. So to push their ego upwards, that they're great at what they do, whether guy or girl. And a type person like that, man, run, because they'll only destroy your life. And can they come around? Yeah, but if it's going to be 10 or 20 years, you want to lose your life? Believe God and trust God for a person who's ready and wanting to have a relationship. Another thing is, if you're a Christian, the Bible tells you in Galatians 5 that you shouldn't be even partaking. Even if you think to men, he says, even if you look upon a woman with a desire, you've already committed the sin. So, and because there'll be people watching this that aren't Christian based, I'll talk in both ways so it helps anybody who listens to it. But I'm going to start talking about this, okay? And this is a number one. A lot of young people start growing up in their teenage years. They feel they're not socially, they don't know how to socially communicate. They don't feel good about themselves. They don't know if they're pretty or not pretty. They don't know if they sound right, look right. And so they get very insecure. So after a while, they start to, they could be a very good looking person, but they be like all the other people are having a relationship and they're not, because they have a lack of confidence and social problems. They don't understand how to communicate or how to accept themselves. Later on in life, they start getting more confident, and all of a sudden, they start seeing more people come around them. Or when they were younger, they're disproportionate. Their nose was bigger, their ears were bigger or something. And, so what if a person has something different out of proportion? But as a young person, that happens a lot. And then they grow and it starts to grow more balanced. But when it starts to grow more balanced and they get more confidence, all of a sudden they turn from this kind little person into predator type, because now they want to make up and they feel, I'm now somebody amazing and I can get somebody. So they start to get involved in relationships more and more. And they're not really looking for a deep relationship. They're more looking to see who they can get, how far they can go. And it's a predator mentality, but it comes out of insecurity. But how long will a person do that? Usually until they get into enough issues that they start realizing that it's not a good thing and it will backfire in their face. But that can take a long time for them to face it. Usually many broken relationships and a lot of issues come in. Now, I'll share along the way some different issues that happen and how people manipulate control. Some of them is from people I've counseled and worked alongside. There's one guy I knew. He was much older, and he was in his early 30s at the time. And a lot of girls that were about 18 to 26 were crazy about him. He had curly hair, and he always giggled and laughed. And he was a bigger guy, but not heavy, just bigger. And he was a form of Portuguese descendant. And so a lot of girls saw him, but I knew when he was up to something crafty, because he'd always turn around and go, "Oh, she's sweet." And as soon as he said she's sweet, I knew that that's the girl he was targeting. And he would go after that girl and pursue her. And he would usually always get the girl. But then the girls would fall madly in love with him. And usually he'd start feeling, okay, this is too long, because he never wanted to be with a girl too long. There's one girl he did stay a long time with, but I'll talk about that a bit after. But what happened is he hurt a lot of girls. And the girls would always try to get a commitment. They couldn't get deeper commitment. And their insecurity to make sure that he was theirs led them to incredible emotional moments. And he would count on that. I don't think he'd plan out, but he would always wait for the moment where the girl would get angry at him and start yelling at him. Because when somebody's emotionally charged, they react out. And that's when he would go, I don't want any of this. And he'd walk away and never see the girl again. So he couldn't walk away until the girl did that. But he played these little games. And his game was to let the girl blow up and then blame her and walk away. So he didn't feel guilty. One day he met a girl that he did feel guilty about quite a bit. She got pregnant. And she was a very sweet, sweet person. And she kind of like didn't yell at him, so he couldn't get away. He stayed with her the longest, but one day he just disappeared on her about 6 months later, just disappeared. And that was his only way to get away, because he couldn't get out any other way. He fathered many children with many girls. That's the unfortunate part. He left the girls in great harm because now they're single moms. But those girls could have made better decisions too, and they should have. And this guy just seemed like, seriously, like if you met him, you'd go, man, he's sweeter than honey. because of his attitude. He was so fun and easygoing, and he was so fair, but he had hidden agenda, and that hurt a lot of people. So I'm saying to you that the way he worked it and his manipulation was to get the person to become emotionally stressed, blow up, and then he'd walk away. The thing is, the girls, the reason they got so emotionally stressed because the writing was on the wall. They could feel something was wrong, but there was many things wrong. And to win over somebody for their, oh, can you find the battery charger right there? There, can you get me the battery wire, please? Sorry about that, folks. I'll just pause for a second because the battery charger is sounding off, so I'm going to pause. Mission accomplished. Houston, we have liftoff. So, sorry about that. The power plug was not plugged in, and I lost out a little bit there. So, anyhow, the dynamics are there. When it comes to sexuality, the manipulations, the controls, the pain people go through, there's cases where, and this is girls and guys, where they'll get close to a person, closer, either something just happens or doesn't happen or happens, and then the person feels shame, so they start to blame the other person for it happening. If you knew how many times I've heard that type of story, it's incredible. And it's always the other person's fault. And what it is that deep down inside, whether it's a religious belief or whether it's a guilt because, the parents always told them it's wrong, they get to a place where they can't face the fact of what they did. So they'll create a scenario. And then in that scenario, they will cause blame to go on the other person. And there's a lot of situations that you hear and you just go, oh. And it's like, why would somebody be so monstrous to go cause issues like that? A lot of the times is because they can't face themselves. Now, I'll give you a situation that I personally dealt with. It was as a church. It was a big church, and I was involved with the church quite a bit. And I noticed at the end of the service, and there was about 50 to 75 people in the crowd. And in the middle of this crowd was this girl that was just newly there. And I went, okay. So I walked closer and I heard the conversation. And I hear quite clearly in the spirit for a lot of things. And so when the Lord wants me to hear, of course. But I was standing there and I heard the girl talk about how she was at this other church and the youth pastor had taken advantage of her, and how now he's fired, but how he caused her a lot of pain and grief. And I sat there and I listened, and I heard the Holy Spirit say it so clearly to me, and I repeated it in the crowd. So everyone stopped, looked, and it's very daring, but when you know the truth, when God shows you something, it shuts it down. And what the Lord gave me is this: it's, you drew it on and you liked it. And that's all I said out clearly, and I said it nicely. She shut up, the whole crowd looked over, and it was the end of it. The crowd dispersed. She lost her ability to get all these people to woo over her. And I think she was just going to repeat the same thing at this other church. So it killed it in its tracks. But the question is why would this girl even go there? And it's not just girls, guys do this. Why? So these things there's a lot of things could fall in their life, but what it is with her, I believe it was a power. She would go after people, and this is a known factor even in society. There's girls that go after policemen, after people, that are considered an image out in public, and then they'll try to destroy them because it gives them a greater sense of power. So in that case, that was done. I had another case where I had a whole bunch of people come up to me, women, and say, this guy is really giving us a hard time. He's just too touchy, like he's always wanted to be close. And it came to a point they're just saying, like, we really can't stand this anymore. And he kind of just, even in his conversation, we just feel cornered, like he manipulates us. The guy had been in a previous marriage. It didn't last very long. It was a very short marriage. And the reason why is because he was mentally, I guess, and verbally abusing the girl. It ended quickly. And so these few girls, and I came up and I talked to him about it. And I said, so this person, you seem to kind of corral them. And he goes, yes. He says, they're a blessing from God for me, so I can choose one of them. And you see, in his mind, he had already decided that he had ownership over these people. Sometimes there's some people that feel that way. If you have somebody and you just feel all of a sudden like you've been put into their bag, it's because they feel they have ownership over you. A relationship, you should never be in somebody's box. You should be appreciated, loved, cherished. And if the person really cares about you, what they should do is want to know you. And when you feel corralled, pushed, you feel like you don't have much of a choice, something's wrong. Don't ignore that. Then you should look at that and go, something's wrong here. So I'm giving different analogies to bring in some different things. And there's one, I worked with a few different cases like this, but this one case blew me away. And I'm going to share some things that are way out. It's like, wow, is that possible? And I'll share the details of it to show why this happens and what happens. And this isn't a case where you need to be merciful and graceful because you don't understand, and they're not going to tell you the footsteps they walked in. But it was this girl, and she was really a very pretty girl, but at a young age, at 8 years old, her dad started to molest her. And he would he would penetrate her from the age 8 on. This girl said, I would leave my body. She wasn't leaving her body. She was just tuning out because it was too harsh. And it was very painful for her. And she says, that was fine. I just learned to tune away. And her dad would usually tell her right at the beginning that she was a really smart, beautiful girl, and he loved her very much. And at the end of every motion, he would turn around to her and say, you're a dirty little girl. You shouldn't have done what you've done. And then, of course, protect himself from any problems legally. And then the girl says at 13 years old, she says, I felt madly in love with my dad. And the reason why is because when her dad was doing that and she tuned out, she had her first orgasm. She fell in love with her dad because of what happens in that. And that girl went through all types of problems. And the dad realized, uh-oh, she's madly in love with me. So he did other things to get her attention away. But that girl grew up to never be able to have a proper relationship. Any relationship she was in, she would end up going to another one and another one and another one. And sometimes having a few relations from different places. And the reason why she did not understand love and friendship wise, when somebody cares about you, or love when somebody does something that's really painful to you, like that hurts you. But what she understood was love was touch, because the only time her father ever told her that she was beautiful and he loved her was before he would abuse her. So that girl grew up messed up. Is it possible to bring that girl around? Absolutely. But it's going to take somebody, and it doesn't necessarily mean a husband, but that would be a good thing. A man that's full of love and care and patience, and is willing to build her up and show her value, that she's not just a value for touch, that he loves her without touch, and he loves her in the touch, once they're married, of course. And that's what that girl really needs. But if you saw what she was like, you'd think, and probably think some names that are incorrect to say, thinking that she's loose, she's this, she's that. No, she was a broken person, very ill, because she was destroyed as a young person. So her way of being, and she didn't even try to do it, but she would manipulate every situation she was in, every relationship she was in, because she did not know how to have a normal relationship. What she learned was from her dad, and he manipulated her throughout her whole childhood. So you wonder, it's like, well, that's horrific. That's mild. If you knew some of the stuff, and there's stuff I wouldn't even bother repeating, but you knew stuff that happened to a lot of young girls, you'd go, I can't even believe that. And yeah, it does. And boys, most of the time, they've been molested by a male. It's usually not, very seldomly it's a female, but most of the time male. Their problem is they grow up with homophobic problems. They grow up also not really being able to be close to any woman. A lot of them later on will form a relationship, even marry, but they'll have a problem getting close. And the reason they'll have a problem getting close is because every time they do go to get close, there's a barrier blockage because of what they experienced at that young age. And a lot of times they'll feel drawn to men, but not, and hate it. And they'll go, what's going wrong with me? And the reason is because they were abused. And a lot of them will not tell you, they won't come out with it. Later on in life, they'll start thinking that they're bisexual, all types of things will come up. When you see these things, it messes up many people's brains. And so as you walk and you see people do crazy things, don't quickly assume that they're just toxic. They might be actually very sick and need help. Now, what they do can be very toxic to other people, but it's how you respond that can make the difference. But again, at the same time, you can never be, you can encourage and build people up, but you can't carry them. If ever you carry people and you try to fix them, you're part of the problem, because you can't fix people and you can't carry them. You can encourage them, build them up, help them, but don't carry them and don't fix them. That's not your job. You can't do that. When you start to communicate with them, if you know what you're talking about, you could help them look at things differently. But again, it's not you fixing them. The person themselves, as they hear the right things and put things together, they will start to fix from just what's happening inside them and what they're seeing. Pills has their points, but usually it's more of a number than it is a fixer. You get things that help with the emotional levels, sure. So go on with that. I'll talk a little bit about marriages, because in marriages, and it'll be in relationships too, but in marriages, the partner could become actually an abuser, because they are not really wanting to be intimate. They just want sex. Their partner could be a blow-up balloon, and that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for intimacy. They're looking to prove to themselves that they're powerful, or because they're angry and they want to get their anger out. And a lot of weird things that people do that really harms in relationships. And anybody who's in one of those will tell you it's awful, because they feel used instead of feeling appreciated and loved. The person doing it, they're very selfish. Their ego, their pride is incredibly big. And the thing is, how do you deal with that? Well, a lot of times to say to the person, I'm sorry, I can't fit that mold. But there's a positive way, and that's what I'm going to be talking about as we go through this. In the mold that I will talk about, it's where you actually start saying to the other person, there's two of us here, and I'm not demanding from you, but I have needs too. And if my needs aren't met, then I'm going to die inside. And if I die inside, you're not going to like who you're going to get. And so I need you to hear this. And a lot of times people that are behaving in those ways, they don't want to hear it, or they can't hear it. But the more you start saying no to the bad behavior. So there's a bad behavior that's there. You say, I'm sorry, this is wrong. We got to stop here. And they start learning that, and this is what most issues that happen. People say, well, if I do that, they won't want to be my friend anymore. If I do that, the marriage will break up. Then my question is for you is this: if you finally become part of the marriage, and if you start speaking up and they're going to break the marriage up, then you don't have a marriage. You just basically are owned and operated. And at some place you got to say, no, this is not right. We did not come together on this. And if you had a hidden nature, then we need to talk about it, because this is not what I bought into. The person I married is not this person. And if you've had this hidden nature, or you've brought on new nature, then we need to talk about it. Because, when I get on a plane going to a certain country, I don't expect to end up the actual opposite way. When I married you, and I know that marriage has got a lot of issues, but I married you because I saw us being one. And it doesn't seem that way now. So we need to work on that. And I'm willing to work on that. Are you willing to work on that? In any marriage, if one person wants to work on it, it can heal. But if the other person absolutely does not want to work on it, you're done. Could the person come around? They can. But could you imagine you're in your 30s and the person finally decides to come around in their 60s, your life is over with. But at the same time, this other person served themselves. And you basically lived in the dungeon, because the dungeon is when somebody has control of your life. You should never allow anybody to have control over your life. I believe one thing, God could, but God doesn't control you. He actually leads you, loves you, guides you, cherishes you. That's not a control. A control is when there's a demand put on you, you have no choice. And that's not a way to live. And it's not about demanding the other person, it's about talking with them, saying, this can't work. I'm unhappy. You might be happy, but I'm not. Now, the problem that happens sometimes is you have a person that's whiny and they'll never be happy. And that's true, it does happen. So you have to search yourself out. Are you whiny, or are your needs true? And there's sometimes it's as simple as that. You say to the person, I want you to hug me every day before you leave and kiss me. I want you to tell me that you love me. And it's amazing, but those simple little acts will change the pride, the ego, the selfishness in a relationship. And you think, well, how can that help? Try it if you're married. And it works because the other person has to dedicate. And as they start dedicating those things, they start getting used to showing it. But you'll have some men, and you could see it, there's on YouTube, they show people on the kiss cam at a football game. And the person doesn't want to kiss them right there. And then finally, either the man or the woman turns around and pours their popcorn over the other person or whatever. And that's because they didn't want to show that affection publicly. Well, if you're married, why wouldn't you want to show that affection? Are you hiding something? Are you trying to put on a different image? So I'm just saying there's a lot of crafty things. Now, you can get a person, and these days it happens a lot because of dating services and stuff, where people go online, they go meet somebody, and then another person, and they can meet 3, 4, 5, 6 people in a week. If you're doing that, you're not being truthful, not to yourself, because there's no respect towards yourself in that. You're meeting other people that have put their best face forward, and you don't know them. And what you're doing is actually, you're going out on a hunt, and that doesn't bring forth good fruit. Can there be some people that find something good? Yeah, sure. But that's not what I've been hearing. I've been hearing more people say how problems happened, right? So I will get into it. What causes the drives and stuff? There's guys that will tell you anything you want to hear. And the reason why is because they know that women, touch and listening, are the two things that reaches their heart. If a man says, you're such a sweet person, and that will hit. And then touch. All those things put together bring in some issues. With men, same thing. Some men, and this is a game, and I'll say this, I've seen this over and over. When men complain about their wives, they're actually talking, women too, when they complain about their husband, they're actually showing that they're available, because the other person listening to the conversation will go, oh, poor you. You're such a nice man. You don't deserve this. And it's like a coddling. Next thing you know, there's closeness starting to happen. So if you ever hear a married man or married woman complain about their partner, you just say, you need to go dedicate yourself at home and talk and communicate and help and strengthen. And, and sometimes there's carnal reasons. A person might think, my partner, and I've heard a woman tell me this, just, he's fat, he smells, and just went on. And I went, oh boy. And the things that were going on in this woman's life, you just go. But the thing is, in her mind, it was true. And I've heard men, they complain and over, but meanwhile, you hear about what's going on in their life and the truth, and you just go, are you serious? And you're complaining about her. So I'm saying to you right away, young ladies, don't fall for men, whether married or not married, that want you to be their mummy, They say things to make you go, poor you. And when they start playing you like that, a lot of times they're from single mummy homes. The father might be there, but he's not active. And so what happens is the guy learns at a young age how to please how to be nice to his mom. So he learns exactly what girls want to hear, and he'll start saying those words. So if you feel that you're just like, I'll give you a way not to be manipulated. It's this: don't fall head over heels. Get away from the situation. Start thinking about it. Start wondering why you're feeling that way, and stop telling yourself that it's always the right person. Because if you take time, the right person will always be there. So don't rush into anything and be wise. Ask yourself this: why are you so insecure and need to catch somebody right away? Why can't they be your friend? Why can't you leave it like that? Why do you have to automatically prove that he loves you? It's like, because we've seen it in movies. You've heard friends say it, and it's always about catching a guy or catching a girl. Get that out of your system. It's a lie, and it will only harm you. Then you become a predator in your beliefs because of that. So stay away from that type of stuff. Don't let people manipulate. Another thing is, a person can manipulate you by telling you how beautiful you are, so on, but they can also do the opposite. They can cut you down, mock you, to try to make you feel inferior so they can take advantage of you. So if somebody starts to joke about you or make little innuendos, get away from that. They are girls and guys that are clingers. As soon as you show them a bit of attention, it's like a fly on a mosquito sticky pad. Bing! They're on there because they find value by being accepted by someone. So you look at them and go, hello, and automatically they're in love. There's some deep issues there, and they will create wars, because if you even rejection, it's right, rejection problems. If you even slightly say, whoa, they will create a monster of situation, making you feel like you've wrecked their lives, when actually they're a sticky paper and they're trying to catch a fly. All right. So understand there's different characters rolling through different people. But the Bible tells you so accurately, and it says, in Galatians 5, you should stay away from fornication, or even for men to, even the thought. And so you keep things right, keep things whole, respect people. Men, when you look at women, look at them as a person, not as a deer in the headlights. All right? Treat them with honor, show them respect, build value in them, encourage them for who they are. Women, it doesn't matter. If 3 girls are interested in that guy, you don't want to catch them before the 3 guys. Okay? If there's that many guys interested, or that many girls interested in one guy, you don't want that type of competition. You don't want somebody who's, to see where the dice is going to roll. You want a true relationship. So if the other girls are interested in him, that's not when you become interested. That's an alter ego where you're trying to see if you add up to what those other girls do. And come on, get straight, get real about it, okay? Now, if you're all heartbroken, you can't even eat, you can't even face things. It's like my whole life is this guy or this girl. Stop it, because there's something wrong already. That's not love, and it's a dominance. Your emotions are all over the place, and it's not long before you're going to try to entrap that person, because your only reason of living becomes that person. That's illness, and you need help. And what you need help for is to build up who you are and understand your values. You haven't found out who you are if that's how you think. You're still trying to find yourself through other people, and that's not healthy, because you leave yourself wide open for a lot of trouble and to cause trouble. All right? So I'll put it this way: take ownership of your own dealings and stop trying to blame somebody else. Take ownership of the fact that it's not you, again, got the wrong guy. but that maybe there's something needs to change in you, or I got the wrong girl. And you need to change your value system, what you look at, what you're looking for. It's not about the hunt. It's about you living your life, finding out who you are, finding out your values. And this is something that most people don't know until their 30s or 40s sometimes. Can you find out earlier? Yeah, help you look at this. It's like, what do I really like? Do I like having somebody with me all the time? Or do I like having somebody with me only a very little amount of time? Because if you're a person that likes to be with somebody and then have a lot of free time for yourself, so you can go paint or do something, but you just like your alone time, and then you meet a guy that wants all your time, it's not long before there's going to be wars. Or if you are a type that wants somebody to be there all the time, and the person really likes to play their basketball and this and that, and only be there when they have time between their basketball and their football, well, you're going to have wars in that relationship. So what you really have to find out is, first of all, what type of relationship do you want? Who do you want? Do you want somebody who's going to bend to your, well, in a lot of times when you're young, you think if somebody will, bends to your will, that you'll be happy. No, you won't be. So you really have to find out what you want. Somebody who really understands you. Well, most people say yes. Do I need somebody who is very firm and puts me in my place? Well, it depends what you mean by that. If they love you and they're able to talk to you kindly and help you see some things, sure. But if they're demanding, pushy, and like, that's enough, no, that'll end up in big problems because you'll end up in big wars. So you got to find out who you are, what you want, where you want to be, what you want to do. Let's say if you want to be, some explorer in the North or South Pole, and you left to be there for 2 years at a time, and you meet somebody who can't stand the cold, well, you got a problem. You got a real problem, because it means your relationship is going to have burdens all the way through. If you have a person, and yeah, I gotta leave that alone. But you have to understand what causes all these controls and manipulations. They're out of insecurities both ways. And you got to find out who you are so you can't be manipulated. If somebody's controlling you, you'll have a loss of sense of who you are. You'll get discouraged. You'll feel lonely. You'll feel mad. You'll feel all types of things. And you're going, what's wrong with me? The problem is you're being controlled. Now, are you involved in that control? Maybe. It's possible. But a lot of times something's wrong and you need to stop and you need to listen. In a relationship, if you're unhappy all the time, and this is what happens, eventually, it's called stonewalling. You'll put up a wall and you'll block out your partner. And you'll see them as horrible, evil, and you'll start thinking, I don't have to be in this relationship. Well, I'm married, but the relationship's really dead. There's no marriage. That is such a lie. And the Bible tells you it's the craftiness of the enemy. And when you see stuff like that, you got to look at it with truth and honesty and say, something's not right. And how does that get fixed? One of the most important things in a relationship is communication. Honest, loving. In a communication, it's not about what you want, it's about what the relationship needs. You're one. If you're married, you're one. And it's about how to help both people. So your relationship should always be in communication, unselfish, and building to the relationship, not controlling. If your demands are, you must do this, you must do that, or I won't be happy with you, well, guess what? You won't be happy. Because if you follow all the demands, they'll put more demands on. And if you follow all those demands, eventually you'll be unhappy because you're being put into a box. And once you're in that box, the person won't respect you because you have no fortitude to who you are. Every time they make demands, you'll follow it through. So eventually you'll be boring to them. So that's where you got to say, no, wait a second here. There's things I want. And I want this is not a selfish thing. There's certain things, let's say you love painting and the person won't let you paint. Well, that's part of you dying off right there. Sometimes there's sacrifice. You have kids, boy, can kids tear your time away. But you still need to have expression of who you are. Okay? So In the sexual, there's issues that come up, and people are driven by sexual forces. And what it is, it's in their mind. They crave it. They think about it. If you have a person that does that, it's like even looking at pictures, you know, that's not healthy. And I know some people will say, oh, it is. It is not healthy. Because what you're saying is that those pictures do something for me. Well, what about your mate? And a lot of times, if it's a man, the woman does the same thing, the man won't be happy about it. He'll be very distraught about it because it's okay for him to do it, but not her, or vice versa. And with a sense of jealousy, usually jealousy is the person that's the most loose as a goose, is the person that's the most jealous and controlling. And the other person on the other side, and I'm not saying there's not cases where there's true issues, but usually it's because the person who's promiscuous gets jealous because they think that way. So they automatically blame the other person of being that way. So when it comes to sexuality, there's a lot of rage, anger, controls, manipulation, lies. And so my best encouragement to you is that in any relationship where you see these things going forward, if you're being controlled and if the person's always trying to push you to go further in their weirdness or whatever, and that's when you turn on and you go, absolutely not. And there's cases where a partner's been encouraged to do something they didn't want to do, and it really destroyed them. So I'm saying this to you, you have the rights to say no. You have the rights to tell them that you're not comfortable with that, and the other person should respect you highly and absolutely love you for that. Okay? So I'm not going to go further than that. There's too much in that topic. I'm just lightly touching it. But when you feel cornered and you feel forced, when you feel like you're being having to go to a place and the person uses guilt, absolutely back away from it. If you know the person has a tendency to have ill intent and they're known in their way, if they try to guilt you, right away go the opposite way that they're trying to guilt you to, because that's how you break it. Okay? Strongly do not give way, do not give heed, and choose your pathway. All right. Good. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. There's, like I said, it's a vast subject, but I don't want to open every can of worm because that could cause a lot of pain to some people. And sometimes when can of worms are open, you need somebody there to talk to. And if anything I've shared today has hit you and you know it's deep, then you should find somebody and just talk. And it has to be somebody that is aware and knowledgeable in the area, but also trustworthy, because you need your privacy, and what you share in privacy should remain in privacy. All right? Good. Bless you, and I really encourage you, take your life back. Don't let it just roll down the hill. Make choices. And sexuality was created by God, but it wasn't created to be perverted. It was created to be beautiful, intimate, and something that a man and a woman that love each other would share and that they would really enjoy. When it becomes something that makes you compromise and change your ways, then it's left the right arena. All right? Bless you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.